Hello, and welcome to Diversability Amplified. Happy Disability Pride. It's July 2nd, so it's day 2 of Disability Pride. And in celebration of that, today's episode, we're going to be talking about what does disability pride mean to you? I'm your host, Farley, and I am a DLC member, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am a white cisgender woman in my early 30s. I'm physically disabled and seated in my motorized wheelchair, and I have long, wavy brown hair, and I'm wearing a black dress and a light pink cardigan sweater. So hello, everybody. Why don't you, I'm here just here with 2 people. So, but why don't both of you introduce yourselves?
I'm Jennifer. I'm also a DLC member. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a white woman, also physically disabled in a wheelchair. And I have blondish, grayish hair, pull back in a ponytail, and brown glasses.
Thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everyone. You have Tiffany Yu here. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the CEO and founder of Diversability, but and I'm a Taiwanese American woman with below the shoulder length black hair, and I'm wearing a blue top, joining you from my apartment in Los Angeles, where I have a vintage Friends poster behind me.
Awesome. And I love your Friends poster. I love Friends. I love that show. So I guess let's dig right in. So what does disability pride mean to you? I want to hear both of your thoughts, and we can sort of kick off a conversation from there.
So I think disability pride isn't necessarily thinking, "Oh, I'm so happy I'm disabled and everything's sunshine and roses." Like, it's about accepting the good and the bad and just being okay with what it is and not necessarily trying to hide yourself. Sorry, my dog's making noise. So I think that's what it's really about, like acknowledging there's some good stuff, there's some bad stuff, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah, this is Tiffany. I love that. I think it was interesting because when I look online and I type in what is disability pride, there really isn't like a concrete answer for it. And I guess the shortest way I explain it is it's the ways in which we as disabled people assert our value and worth in a society that tells us that we should feel shame about who we are.
Yeah.
And if I can do a little bit of a shameless plug, I'd love to read just a very brief part from my forthcoming book. But back in 2009, so 15 years ago, I wanted to start the first iteration of Diversability, and I would tell people that I was looking to start a movement around disability pride. And so what's disability pride? They asked, how can you be proud to be disabled? As Ardra Shepard writes, being proud to be disabled isn't about liking my disability. It isn't about pretending that disability doesn't straight up suck. Rather, claiming disability pride is a rejection of the notion that I should feel ashamed of my body or my disability. Declaring my pride means that I don't accept society's definition of disability. Loving my disabled body is a radical act that can challenge the way people think about disability, one that promotes the idea that it's normal to be imperfect. I agree with Shepard. Disability pride doesn't mean loving every aspect of our disability, body, mind, or experience. It's nuanced and varied and means something different to each of us, but it means we get to be part of a vibrant community that we can be proud of. The way I see it, disability pride is an example of an anti-ableist mindset and behavior because it helps us to combat ableism by making disability visible and worthy. It's rooted in action rather than neutrality, and it helps us to move toward a disability-inclusive world. More than just a call for acceptance, it celebrates the intrinsic worth and meaningful contributions of disabled people. Thanks for letting me do my shameless plug. I didn't even ask. I just said I'm going to read this.
That's what you got.
But Emma, like, I guess I'm curious for you if either of those resonate with you or kind of how you've defined disability pride.
Yeah, well, so both of what you guys said resonated with me, and I agree with both of your insights and views. But I think that what I would add to it is, well, I guess, you know, any part of identity is not all positive. Like, you know, I identify as a female, and am I proud to be a female? Absolutely. And is being a female positive all the time? Absolutely not. Sometimes being a woman is the worst. And that comes from the way that females are treated in society, but also just inherently some things about being a woman biologically, like it can be a little tough. You know, and anybody who identifies as female will understand that it's a gray area, but overall I'm proud of all of my identity, so disability being one of those. And but it's also about like being proud of the history. I love the history, and I mean those are, I look at the activists and the people who were trailblazers that came before me. Those are my ancestors, and I'm so proud of that. Like, those are my disability ancestors, and I feel an incredible sense of pride with that, because it's really it's quite remarkable to be connected to such amazing people, even if I never met them. You know, I never met Judy Heumann, but I have this connection with her, or any of the other activists. Yeah, so I think that's part of it. I think it's also being proud to be part of a community that, I mean, disability intersects with all other identities, all other communities. It exists on all corners of the earth. So it's kind of like I feel more connected to the world through disability, because I know that no matter where I go, not everybody is going to be like, look like me, believe what I believe, but there will be somebody wherever I go who's disabled. And that makes me feel connected to the world. And I really, really like that. And it's hard to feel connected to the world in this day and age. We live on a big one, you know? So that's, yeah, I would say I agree with everything both of you said, but those are the things I would add to it.
Yeah, I really, really like that. I loved your part of your book, Tiffany. That's wonderful. I know, like, I've talked to some people, or I've been on Zooms with people, and they're like, oh, I'm not there yet. I don't have disability pride. And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't understand it as a destination. That's why I think it's about accepting both sides of it, you know, and not, it's, when you say you have disability pride, it's not, you know, I love being disabled. It's the favorite thing about me. I don't know than any of us would say it's our favorite. Maybe we would. I don't know. I guess it depends on what context you're looking at it.
And I
In.
think it depends what your experience is. I mean, with
Right.
disability, I mean, we have all disability is that's an umbrella term, and there's lots of things under that umbrella,
It's
lots of experiences. And so I'm open to like anybody's perspective. I think, that makes sense. I don't think it's ever going to be like, you should think of it this way.
yeah.
I think also, but I mean, for me, another thing is the perspective. I mean, I I think I've thought often, like, who would I be if I wasn't disabled? And honestly, I think a lot of the wonderful things that I've learned, the important things that I've learned about life, the way that I look at my perspective, the eyes that I see the world through, that the things that make that so beautiful come from disability. I really credit that. And I if I wasn't able to just be like another one of those white girls, like, I don't know. I kind of think like, ooh, could have, yeah, I think it's something that has brought a lot of really beautiful things to my life. And that's what I really am proud of that, because I just don't think I think I would have struggled otherwise, understanding the family I was born into, the environments I grew up in. I think I would have struggled in this day and age, in this climate, had it not been for disability. And I am really grateful that I can see other people, and see things that others don't necessarily pick up on. And I'm glad that I have an understanding of inclusion and what that means, and being patient with others. And I don't know, it extends to a lot of different things that I think others really are having a hard time with. These concepts. And because I'm disabled, these are concepts that come really easily to me, that I understand right away. And that's allowed me to navigate the world a lot easier.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Tiffany.
yeah, I
Sorry.
mean, I think a couple interesting things coming up. Like, I love, Jennifer, the way you described as kind of like not really viewing disability pride as a destination per se, but I also understand that I've definitely met people who are disabled who are not proud, right? And I want to make space and nuance for that. And at the same time, as someone who acquired my disability, I did live a period of my life like as a non-disabled person, and also wanting to make space for what I call like disability grief. And even for those who have disabilities that are congenital, like how they manifest over time. And so if I have people who are coming to me who are earlier in their disability grief journey, I might not be super relatable to them as someone who's very loud and proud, right? But I have been spending a lot of time thinking that for the first 12 years after I became disabled, like I very much sat in my disability grief. I didn't understand that there was this, Emma, as you said, this incredible community that you could be a part of, right? And I actually think that not only the creation of Diversability as a community, but me plugging myself into a disability-centered community is really what accelerated my own disability pride journey. So yeah, and then I guess I'll also say, yes, disability is super diverse. And I did some research around, okay, you have all these people who not only have different access needs, have totally different disabilities and different ways that they navigate the world. Like, what are the things that actually unite us so that we can show up in solidarity with each other? And number one is being oppressed in one way or another, and then having to develop resilience and having to adapt in whatever way that looks like for you. So for me, in my own study of like disability culture and learning more about the disability community, it's okay, we can not agree on things within our community. And, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge there's some infighting that feels like it's always happening at anyone's point in time, but we can agree that all of us have experienced having to adapt to a society, to a world that wasn't built for us, and also potentially being treated differently or being oppressed in this aspect of our identity because it is different.
And I
Yes.
think, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm kind of like, I was not diagnosed with my disability until I was 17. So, yes, I was probably in that grief stage for about 10 years. Until I started working in the disability community, and that totally shifted my perspective and, opened things up to me in a whole new way.
Yeah. And my disability is a little, I was born with muscular dystrophy. I'm pretty sure my neurodivergence is a birth thing from birth too, but that was diagnosed later. But muscular dystrophy, it was something that transitioned over time. So I'm a full-time wheelchair user now, but I was walking for, a large chunk of my childhood. It was a slow transition into being a wheelchair user. The ADHD, dyscalculia, those are things that, I didn't know about till later. But particularly with muscular dystrophy, my introduction to the disability community was through the Muscular Dystrophy Association, which is a different, so the narrative that was being pushed on me from that organization is not necessarily, that's not something I align with, but that's how I was able to create these connections to other people in my community. And so I felt it was definitely a journey developing disability pride, because I was, for a long time, what was being pushed on me is that it was sort of that inspiration porn. That's probably like the MDA's definition of, disability pride, is being paraded on stage and, looking cute and being on the telethon and all that. And that wasn't me. And so I misunderstood really what disability pride was, because all I understood was what the MDA was feeding me, and what those sort of big nonprofits were very much in control of the narrative, and that's all I was being fed. So it took me a while. It wasn't until really I was always involved, like in school, with my peers who were disabled, and just sort of doing that peer-to-peer interaction made me feel, so I started to develop pride. Using my voice anytime I was advocating for myself or for others, I felt pride. And I started, as I sort of moved towards adulthood, I noticed, and I started to sort of really separate from those organizations. I looked for the real activist and advocate community within disability, and that's really where I started to feel pride, because this was now a narrative I could feel proud of, that I could back up. These were people that had agency, were demanding freedom, were demanding a voice. And that's when I started to really develop it, was when I started to be involved with the disability community in that area, and not in the controlled disability, MDA Special Olympics type narrative. That made me feel almost ashamed, because it didn't align with me, and it made me feel embarrassed. But yeah, and so it really was just finding the right environment within disability, I think, was where I developed it.
Yeah, this is Tiffany. I think I resonate with parts of that journey as well. I feel like I feel like in my early years, my disability was very much viewed through the medical model. So the narrative was always around fixing, don't lean into this. And similar to you, Emma, I think it was finding other people who didn't ascribe to that. And that's not to say, so I'm getting ready to actually go, it's called UBPN camp. So it's a camp for people who have my injuries, and they invite a lot of doctors. And my injury also happens during medical malpractice if you pull the arm out first. So there are a lot of parents there with young kids. And I remember one of the surgeons, one of the pediatric surgeons, like coming to talk to me, and he said, you know, hey, I watched your TEDx talk, and I was like, oh, you know, I think Jennifer's heard this story before, but I stopped him. I said, I'm really sorry. I have a difficult relationship with medical professionals. And he was like, oh, no big deal. But I just want to let you know that as a function of watching your talk, we've added a mental health professional to our rehabilitation team so that other kids who are going through surgeries and things like that, not only are they having to go through this medical trauma, but they also have mental health support with it. And at the same time, I think one thing I realized is that if you really do believe that a surgery or something is going to improve your quality of life as a disabled person, I'm not here to say to prescribe like what you can or can't do. But I will say, I think I for a long time, I don't know if I was like extreme disability pride, because I was like, no fixing, I've done no surgeries, no nothing, blah, blah, blah. And then I would meet these kids, you know, and these adults who have gone through surgeries after the brachial plexus injury that we all have, who are able to, you know, play a guitar now or do things that they maybe loved doing before their injury and have adapted to in different ways. So all of that to say, I guess I'm becoming a little bit more compassionate that there is a time and space for these different models of disability to exist. But I think as I was growing up, it was so heavy medical model, me thinking there was something wrong with my body and that it shouldn't be seen. And I call it like the alphabet soup of medical procedures and different types of treatments that my mom tried. But yeah, I will say that Diversability was my first disability community. And I do find that for a lot of disabled people who are newer on their disability journeys, often find us as their first community too. And similar to what you said, Emma, like my big belief is maybe it's Diversability is the place you find community. And if it's not, that's fine. I just hope that no matter where you are, if it's MDA, if it is Special Olympics, if it is some of those organizations, like you find that sense of belonging, because I actually think that's what's going to create pride, no matter what that looks like for you, and a sense of empowerment too.
And I think, yeah, and I agree. It's however, it's about the effect that things have on you. So again, like which community has a good effect, or even like going back to when you were speaking about surgeries, it's like we're being motivated to get a surgery or to get a treatment. It's like, but where is that coming from? As long as you're working, I feel like my opinion is work through your internalized ableism, work through, because we all, I mean, there's no way you can live in this world and not be impacted by, the ableism within society. So I think work through that. And if you, after you've done that work, still come back to the same place, okay. But just make sure it's coming from, you're doing it for the right reasons. I would say that about any sort of change you're making. I'd say that to somebody who wants to dye their hair a bright color, like, why are you doing it? Like, so, yeah, I think, and when I hear other people wanting to change something about their disabled body, I immediately, because I tend to get more like, no, don't change. Like, I feel like that too, but I started to sort of take a step back and say, all right, well, everybody has the right to make whatever changes they want to their body. It's their body, but I just hope it's coming from the right place. And that's what I encourage people to do. Because if you make a change for the wrong reasons, it's only going to, internally it does harm. It sends a message about your value.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, like, in terms of internalized ableism, I didn't really start recognizing it in myself until maybe a couple of years ago. And, at first I'm like, oh, it's just insecurities or whatever. And then, when you look a little deeper, you're like, oh, that's what that is. Okay. And yeah, it's a continual learning thing too. I mean, I just turned 50, so that makes a huge difference. I feel like I bring up I'm 50 a lot. I feel like that Saturday Night Live character who's like, I'm 50 and I love it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. But um um oh, I think uh the pride comes into also, like, looking at the the slogan, or I don't know, slogan seems like a weird word to use, but the idea of diversability, like, disability is not a bad word. Everyone's like, well, wait, it, you're using dis as a whatever, to start the word right away. That's a negative thing. And it's like, no, it's negative to you, but it's not negative to me. It's like we're reclaiming the word.
Yeah. And so Jay, you've joined, welcome to the podcast. Do you have, so we're talking about disability pride and what it means, and do you have any thoughts, or is there anything you want to share about disability pride, what it means to you or your journey with it?
Hi everyone. Sorry, I kind of jumped in late. I'm actually reporting from work. Um, I think the way that I see it is, when I think of pride, I think of things like strength, faith, hope. I think of those things, and those are the three key words that come to play. Um, like, I, like as of this moment, okay. Um, like I have so much pride that even though I am disabled, I am able to do some of the things normal people can do, like go to school, go to school, go to college, or not normal people, but any person. Go to school, go to college, hold down two jobs, um, and go to places that you know uh using various transportation facilities. Um, I have sometimes I don't sometimes on certain days I don't have that pride because that pride is being shot down by someone who doesn't see me for who I am, who doesn't understand what it's like to be disabled, and I think that's a really, really bad uh uh I think that sends a really bad signal. I think, like, for example, my parents are not ableist. I'll be right. I'll be honest firsthand. But when they say to me that uh they don't want me, like, for example, like when I was in Bermuda, okay, we all went shopping together, okay, and I all I wanted to do is, you know, just see what's around the mall, just get an idea of what to shop for, what to do, and because I wanted to really my objective was to shop for some of my friends in the CCHS Foundation, because it's just to give them a small token, during my trip, because they talk to me a lot on Messenger or social media, and um it's like they don't want me to wander off. They want me to stay with them. It's like, come on, I'm in the mall. I'm on vacation at the same time. I want to be able to I want to be able to shop by myself like I can anywhere else. Okay. I am not Just because I am disabled, that doesn't mean that I cannot do things independently. Okay. But it's like all they care about is my safety. They say, "Oh, we tell you for your safety. We don't want you to do this for your safety. My safety. Yes, my safety and health is priority. I understand that because I'm in a new place. Nobody will know what to do, and it's like that's all they see is my safety, my safety, my safety. But they sometimes don't understand uh why I do what I want to do, and that's very scary. And that's also the same thing for employers. They don't understand our uniqueness. I guess I just that's also known as an ableist type of character, when someone is not willing to understand what it's like to be in our shoes. And that's the other thing. And again, I say again, sometimes I have pride, and there's some days where I don't feel that pride at all. And to not have that pride is, I'll have to say it, heartbreaking. Hi, VJ. It's heartbreaking. Um, but I'll just stop there because I'll have to end it short. But thank you guys for letting me speak. Emma, take it away, please.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I definitely relate to, having people be overly concerned for my safety. I think, you know, lots of different people, I get that a lot in my life, and I have to remind people to, like, chill out. I've had to, my parents, I would say they are more anti-ableist than most that I've seen. They do a fantastic job, but there are times where they get, because they're my parents, they're protective. But I think I remember talking to them one day, and I asked, like, why are you, because they were being overly protective. It was when I was moving to New York, actually, and I noticed the treatment was different from, when my sister moved to New York and me, and and I realized, well, there is more at stake if something were to happen to me. But and they're also just being my parents. But I think sometimes it's really, my advice would be to just remind people, that you have the right to your adulthood and to take risks. If it is risky, if wandering off is more risky, okay, well, it could be, you have the right to take that risk. But yeah, I guess, but another thing I wanted to bring up is, so how something with disability pride. So this is fairly, I don't know exactly the history of it very well. I don't know when it started, but this was not something I really knew about till very recently, till I was maybe in my mid-20s. Hadn't heard of disability pride. And so I do know it's fairly new, but how it's certainly not, you know, we just came out of June with LGBTQIA plus pride, and that is a global huge month-long event. It is celebrated so you know with lots of different events, parades. It's a huge thing. So how, you know, and then we come to Disability Pride Month, and I already know it's not going to be as popular. So what are some, I wanted to ask, how can we get more people interested or involved in disability pride? How can we create that kind of world, like, you know, and make July look like June, you know?
Yeah, this is Tiffany. I will say, to Jay's point and your point, I also relate with people being overly protective over things and making comments about that's not safe. And I like how you said you just asked them to chill out. I think for me, it's like just reminding myself and them that I know my body best. And if I feel like I'm in, if it's, yeah, sometimes I just want to try. That's my current phase. But I guess two things I'll share. So one is, you know, from a lot of my LGBTQIA plus friends, they're frustrated with how commoditized and commercial and corporate June has become. And in some ways, I talk to my disabled friends, and we kind of wish we got more of that, where, you know, corporates are buying big floats at the parades. And so that was kind of like the first thing is, or I guess I have three things to say, is that we're seeing the extreme of it, how everyone is wearing rainbows and changing their logos in June. And it's and like not really spending as much time on the history part.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I feel like for Disability Pride Month, we have a ways to go to get to that journey, but I feel like it will be part of my own disability pride to like see something like that. Even for me, seeing brands like, I think it was Anthropology or Tommy or Victoria's Secret all start to launch adaptive lines are making me excited. Like, yes, the clothes look nice, you know, and of course I know it's a business, and it's a business opportunity and positively impacts their bottom line. But I think in some ways I'm hoping for more of a commercialization so that people can see that we are out here and we are proud, which leads me to my second point, which is here in LA, Disability Pride Month is actually in October. And it's been proclaimed by one of the supervisors. And I remember bringing up in a call, I'm like, if we can't even get aligned on which month is going to be Disability Pride Month, but can I also be excited that at least we do have a Disability Pride Month and we have a parade that in October. And I also wonder if strategically, because I know in New York, July is Disability Pride Month and they'll do a Disability Pride Parade, but it would be like way too hot here in July to do that. So maybe they picked October because it would be warmer, but also that's National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So there is kind of like, we don't know which month is our month. And I'm hoping for some more alignment there from within our community. And I also think it's a win that big cities, even another DLC member, Nico Meyering, and a lot of the work he's done around the mayoral proclamation of July as Disability Pride Month in Philly. We have San Francisco, Chicago, New York. That's amazing. And then the last thing I'll say, I guess my third point is, it kind of reminds me of why I started Diversability, or a lot of the different initiatives that I run, is kind of like, if we don't see other people doing it, we're going to create it, right? And so I know that a lot of the feedback around Disability Pride Month is that it's a bunch of disabled people cheering and celebrating each other on, but I'm hoping that will have a, like, that will have a trickle effect in in the communities, in the other communities that we're a part of. Because I do think it's amazing that, like, the first time that I really saw a celebration of Disability Pride and Disability Pride Month was in 2015 when I was in New York. And that was the first year that the mayor had proclaimed July as Disability Pride Month. The first year there was a Disability Pride Parade. And so I guess I bring that up that was a milestone year for the ADA. And I am pretty excited that even outside of it not being a milestone year, next year will be the milestone year for the ADA. There still is some noise and some discourse around disability pride and the anniversary of the ADA.
Yeah, and I think, and you brought up a few interesting points, but what I think, as you were kind of bringing up, the commercialization of Pride Month in June and all the, I think being so new, Disability Pride, what we can do, I think it's an opportunity to take notes about what's working and what's not working with other groups and take steps to make sure that we don't fall into the same trap. So it's getting that visibility without the performative commercialization of disability pride, and knowing ahead of time, okay, this is like what's happened with other groups. Let's make that demand up front that that's not going to be a thing. If you're going to change your logo on LinkedIn, if you're a corporation, you better be giving back to the community somehow. Like, I think there's opportunity there, and because I think of the same things, and performative allyship is really hurtful. I think it's one of the most hurtful actions is performative allyship. I think also, and you're right, I think getting aligned as a community on when to have, like, getting an agreement. I think agreeing on a month is one of the easier tasks. I think that's probably something that should be taken care of as soon as possible. And making sure that, and I think the way to do that is really through making sure that we're, we have our diversability community, but bringing, communicating with other organizations, with other groups, being intersectional, and making sure that, we're bringing in other voice, other, people outside of our little, of our group. Well, it's not little, it's pretty big, but of our group, and yeah, and you're right. You have to creating that where you don't see it. And what I like is where I see potential is, this is, I think maybe, I don't know if I just didn't see it before because I wasn't aware, but I feel like people are starting to step up more than ever. And so there's more, I just see more people taking that initiative. So I feel like opportunity is there, but I want to make sure, I do want to get to a place where, what I like about what happened in June is people want to be connected to that. People want to go to the Pride Parade. Like, I wanted to go to the Pride Parade. I am straight, but I wanted to be connected to that because it's such a wonderful, and especially in New York. Oh my gosh. And it made me excited about, I want to do a walking tour for, learning the history of different historical places that happened for the gay community. I want people to be excited like that about disability. That's what I really want, is I want people to want to get to know us and be connected with us, genuinely, because there's things to appreciate the same way I appreciate, from outside the LGBTQIA plus, like, from the outside, I appreciate it, and I want to, be an ally, and that's what I see. I want that motivation. I want to increase that.
Well, it's interesting, like, something just kind of popped into my head. And maybe I'm wrong, but I seem to think or remember that when Will and Grace got her on the air, that's when LGBTQIA pride really took off. So I think perhaps getting ourselves more represented in media in an accurate way might also help us along the way.
Yeah, I think media is a big thing, and that is a tough thing to accomplish. Hollywood's a tough industry to break through in any kind of area of it. It's yeah, but I agree with you. So with a little less, with about 5 minutes left, I wanted to close out. I want to ask, so what's one way for the remainder part of the year, or maybe no, what's one way this month that you want to promote disability pride? What's one way you're going to promote disability pride? I can start by saying in a simple way, I am going to do a better job at speaking positively about my disability instead of focusing on where it's a struggle for this month, because I think I tend to sort of focus on what I'm experiencing in oppression rather than, and I want to show people that people aren't going to know that I should have disability pride if all I'm showing them is how it's awful. So that's one thing I'm going to do better with.
That's amazing. For me, I am going to I'm going to talk to a group next week for San Diego State University, and they're a group that's mainly made up of parents of kids with disabilities. And we are going to be discussing my book, another shameless promotion. My memoir is called My Unexpected Life, Finding Balance Beyond My Diagnosis. So I'm going to be doing that, and I know Emma and I are also hosting a mixer at the end of the month to discuss a documentary on Netflix called Tell Me You Love Me, or Tell Them You Love Me, right? I always get them mixed up. So so I'm looking forward to both of those events and explaining, or maybe not explain, highlighting how I found acceptance and how I hope other people find that in themselves.
I love that. I think that's a really good question. The first thing that's coming up for me is rest. Just because I think that a lot of, I don't know, I feel like the weight and expectation in some ways that I always have to be advocating, that I always have to have a hot take on something. I get forwarded, I'm sure many of you do too. Like anytime there's anything, I get forwarded it. And even just recently, not going to name names, but there's new AI accessibility overlay that has raised millions of dollars. And one of my friends forwarded it to me, and I then went back to them with the New York Times article that I think is called, "For Blind Users, the Fix is Often Worse the fix is worse or something like that. Anyway, accessibility overlays are not break accessibility for some people who use screen readers, in case this is the first time you're hearing about it. But it was almost like I had to use labor even in that interaction to educate, because I didn't want that person who shared that to continue to, I don't know. And I just see nodding. So REST is part of it. Diversability is also going to be announcing our D30 disability impact list. But I think for me personally, I've kind of just been on a personal journey over the last couple of years of exploring the things that this disabled body can do. And it's been 2 years since I went to the camp for people who have brachial plexus injuries. And last time I was there, I tried archery for the first time. I climbed a rock wall and went roller skating and axe throwing. I wasn't good at the axe throwing, but maybe I'll try again. And it was hosted at the YMCA. And in some ways, you know, my injury happened when I was 9. And I think a lot about not only 9-year-old Tiffany in my work, but just being able to channel who she wanted to be. And that's why I'm kind of excited to go back to camp and throw axes and do whatever new activities they have. So I think it's the embodiment of myself too, of saying, hey, let me, in this safe, super supportive environment, let me try these new things that I always counted myself out of, because like Jay said, people thought it would be too unsafe for me to try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you, both of you, and to Jay, even though he left, for joining for this episode of Diversability Amplified. And thank you, Tiffany, for allowing me to host. And happy Disability Pride.
Happy Disability Pride.
Happy Disability Pride.